All right, today we have this RX8. Has definitely seen better days and seen, you know, a rotary motor, which we just yanked out right here. And this thing is completely blown up. But nevertheless, we're gonna give it some new life with this Honda K series. This is a K24A2 out of an Acura TSX. And this is something we've been spending a lot of time on in the past few months. And essentially we 3D scanned not only the engine, but the engine bay, the entire transmission, and we're now ready to start the install phase on this chassis. So without further ado, we're gonna go ahead and show you some small things that you still have to remove in order to get this as an easy install. First of which are gonna be this heater hose here and this brake line holder. We're gonna remove that, and then we're gonna remove this insulation right here. The next thing we're gonna get to is we're gonna go ahead and take off this AC line, and then we might slightly bend it up to kind of reroute it a little bit. We're gonna take this cowl off, the wipers. We're gonna take all that off so that we can show you what's going on behind this cowling area, to show you what you're gonna have to modify in order to get this 4-cylinder that wasn't made to go in there to fit into this engine bay.
Okay guys, the next step is going to be, first off, removing this cowling area right here, and then we are going to cut this like sound deadening heat soak material off, pull this, and just get this out of the way, wipers out of the way. First thing that you will need to do is over here, you'll see that we've already sort of disassembled this, but for video's sake, you'll see 2 clips here. You can either unscrew them with a Phillips head, but in our case they were stripped, so you'll bend these out of the way. There's a weather stripping piece that comes off. There's like these T-handles here. They just come undone very easily. As far as the wipers go, you will use a 12mm. These pop right off. It's just a 12mm. These are a little tricky because they're splined. Okay. Next step as far as this goes is, like I said, you'll pull these back, which will lift this off. This connects here. Just undo. There you go. Now you have the cowling undone. Next step, you're going to want to cut here. Okay, so now that that's detached, let's start chipping away at removing the rest of this. Alright guys, next step is we're going to pull this off here. All right, now that's off.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Let me take over for a minute.
Yeah, here.
All right, now that that's off, we're gonna go ahead and transition to this heater hose right here. And then once that's off, we're gonna go ahead and knock out these little guys right here and pull those off. Probably cut these studs off right here with a little wire wheel, or see if we can back them out from the other side, and then go from there. We're gonna just see how much of this area we have to kind of restructure. This part is what I was just showing you in that last video, and the hammering of the firewall, we have to go ahead and cut. This is the brake line right here, don't worry about that. But the firewall, we're gonna go ahead and bend down, or hammer down that tab right there. We're gonna cut a little bit of it to trim it just slightly. We cut some of it right here on the back of behind the motor, but we didn't cut enough, so we're gonna cut a little bit more, maybe like 2.5 inches over. Once that's cut off, we're gonna hammer up and then basically fold the tab back down to kind of secure it in there and keep that firewall kind of sealed up. So once that's kind of hammered over, we'll show you how much more we're gonna have to hammer. So if you look back here, you can see this essentially is the surface of the firewall. We're gonna have to go in about 1/4 inch in order to get the clearance for that sensor right there. So just a little bit of hammering on the back of the firewall. This is basically a negative of the firewall. We're looking at from the inside of the vehicle, but this is essentially the skin of the firewall. There's no thickness to this. So what you're looking at is what we have to do in order to get the sensors to essentially fit. So just a small amount of hammering in order to get that to fit correctly, and then we'll go ahead and reinstall this whole system into the vehicle correctly. I'll show you guys what to do. All right, try to get it multiple times. It's being held up by this, this is like the wiper area where the wiper motion kind of articulates. There's also a little plastic piece that kind of goes in here to block air, the fresh air intake from getting water in it. It's like a little plastic piece that goes from like here to here. We're gonna try to keep most of that intact. We might kind of get close to it, but we're definitely gonna cut this part of the chassis probably from right about here all the way over to right next to this bolt-on piece right here where it fastens on the insulation. We're gonna cut right there. I'm gonna try to avoid cutting the brake lines, obviously, but we definitely need to go all the way down and kind of come all the way across here, and then kind of come back up, and then pull all that out. Cut the back portion of this off a little bit. I showed you in that last part where to cut. This is the passenger front brake line right there, tucking it under. When we go to install, what I notice is the top of the motor kind of hangs up right here, and it makes it really difficult to go down. It's also touching the front part of this, so we might actually cut this right here or notch it a little bit in order to kind of get more clearance. So we might come down. I'm gonna go ahead and try to do it one more time. I'm gonna take all these markers out that I used, and then once I go to install it and I see where it's scratching it up, I'm gonna just start removing material until it starts to go in a lot easier. And then once we have that going in a little bit easier, we'll go ahead and set up a way of how we're gonna do this. I got this trimmed up a little bit better. What we're doing is we're gonna fold the bottom side here, we're gonna hammer it up into it, and then we're gonna fold this top part down over it. And we're gonna do this essentially all the way around. That way we can kind of get a good seal, throw some seam sealer in there, and then we're good. Basically, we're refolding this part of the front section. So we're trying to get this flat down, and we're gonna push this in, push this back just a little bit, like about 1/4 inch. If you look at that previous model, you'll be able to see I made a little score mark here with the grinder, ground down just a little bit to kind of give it a stress relief. I didn't cut through it at all, just a little score mark, and also a score mark here. When we hammer in, it has some stress relief to kind of go back. So you'll see that once I start hammering. I'm gonna go ahead and put my eye protection, ear protection back on, and we're gonna start hammering this. Nope, no, no. Just bend this back out. A little tuna can operation here. So. Real close to where we want it. We're almost done. And then we'll be in a position to put this thing in. So, almost there. That's it. Okay guys, hope you can see well. What we're gonna do today essentially is cut away the majority of this tab here. It's gonna be right down through here. And all that's gonna come off. See if I can make a good identical mark here. Anyway, what we're doing is we're making way for the oil pan to come into this area right here. The oil pan is gonna interrupt it's going to come almost all the way up to that little button right there, but it goes all the way down to here. It's going to go clear over to right about here. It's right there. We're going to go ahead and take all that out, and it goes all the way forward to about right here. So it's not all of that, but we're going to take that out to show you how close it comes. But we have a model here we made in the computer. I'm not sure if you can see all this that well, but we're gonna cut this one time, fit it back into the vehicle. But that's pretty much what we have to cut out right there, that little section right there, and then we're gonna reinforce that post-op, and we'll show you guys how to do that here in a little bit. But that's gonna get us enough to get the entire oil pan from the front of this K24 in here. It's basically this hump right here is going to interrupt that area. This huge section right here is going to be in that subframe area. In all its glory, we have the newest iteration. So this now allows another 3 transmissions to bolt up to this engine. So we got the BMW S52 and the N54 patterns on here, along with the RX8 stuff. So with that, we should have a way to do the majority of the rest of these swaps. So we're gonna go ahead and put this on the engine, and then pull the transmission back out, join those two together, and then we're gonna throw this thing back in here and show you guys kind of how it fits so far. Okay, so we're getting ready to drop this system in here. I wanted to show you guys something about the modification of the RX8 transmission right here that you have to clearance for the starter. As you can see, the starter barely protrudes about 1/8 inch, maybe 1/4 inch at the most. I can get some raw data off of the 3D scan. and double check, but essentially we need to remove a small section where this slave cylinder used to go right here. There's a mark right there, like right in the middle of that slave cylinder area to about 2 inches over. It's going to be in between these two, this like casting in indentation right here, and then this bolt hole. It's going to be in between there. There's a little mark right there that we made. So about 2 inches, we're going to go ahead and pull that surface in, 1/4 inch with a grinder, and then that's pretty much it. All right, so we got it ground down, and I think it went a little bit too far, but I mean, if you really want to get detailed, you can kind of just curl it back right there. It's basically right at the center of this, looking down at like a 45-degree angle. It's right at the center of these two posts that hold on the existing slave cylinder, and then you just kind of feather it out. It's maybe 1.5 inches wide from here, so and then you just kind of come out like that, just kind of grind it in just a little bit to where it recesses in there. That's pretty much the extent of that. Got all the bolts on with our RX8 bolt kit, but for the most part, this was so easy kind of putting this thing together. We'll have like a full instruction sheet on how to do this. Something to note, we went ahead and removed everything off of the back here. We have a temporary solution for this once we kind of finish up the installation, but we will show you a little bit more here in a second. All right, so we mounted the trans on to the adapter plate we just made, and the adapter plate fits the contour of the trans exactly how you want it, so that you can kind of get in there and essentially have like a really nice fitting exhaust. And functionality is obviously number one, but we've got this nice load leveler on here, and we're going to dump it in here just to do an initial test fit. We did some computer simulation test fitting, but we're going to go ahead and show you what we saw in the computer. Again, we went ahead and stripped everything off the back here just so that we don't damage it upon the initial installation.
Alright, so basically, the way we are going to space this rack out is going to be this piece here is off an IS-250. Now you can find this online, you can find it in a junkyard. Essentially, it comes on this piece here. It's another U-joint, but right here is where that spacer goes on that Lexus IS-250, between here and the rack. Essentially, I just took a hammer and beat this piece off of that. I just clamped that into a vise and swung at this with a hammer until I separated the two. If you buy them new, they'll pull right apart, but since it was so old, it was kind of seized on there. It is the same spline and diameter as the rack on the RX8. So essentially, it's a spacer just so that we can drop the rack a little bit and move it forward to clear this crank pulley here. So in addition to that, you will need to cut right about here. It's a little difficult to see, but you'll just want to lay your U-joint up against the column on your RX8 and measure out wherever the deepest spot of the spline goes and lop the column off so you can connect the two. As you can see, it clears. Inch is as good as a mile in this case. We would like to see more, but this is how we're going to do it. Okay, one thing that I failed to mention that is rather important is that this is the factory U-joint on the RX8. Now the reason that we can't just use the IS250 U-joint that you saw earlier is that the column spline is actually smaller on the IS250 than it is on the RX8, therefore we just can't use it. So you do want to separate this off of the IS250 steering U-joint. Use this as an adapter. It is a male spline up here that goes into your stock RX8 U-joint. This is exactly where your rack would be if you weren't spacing it down, but since we're spacing it down, you're going to want to have this extension piece in order to be able to steer. So one more time: stock RX8 U-joint, IS250 extension, RX8 rack. Everything bolts together. Splines are compatible. The only thing that you will have to do is separate this U-joint from the RX8 rack, so that once you have the assembly put together, you can measure out where to cut your column in order to get this to all work. Also, one other thing is that this adapter piece has a groove parted midway through the splines. The reason they do this is that so that you can run a bolt through there with ease, that way it doesn't bind on the splines. We're just going to cut that off at the groove, and if we have to, we'll grind a little flat spot in the splines. We don't think that we have to, but if we do, it's no big deal. So yep, that's how you make that work.
All right guys, we are back and we got these RX8 mounts finished up, and we're gonna go ahead and show you guys how to install these on the K series. First step is we're gonna go ahead and grind down, I'll get the camera down in there, grind down these little nubs right here. So these little nubs that stick out on the stock. This is a stock OEM RX8 isolator, or rubber mount essentially. It's got a little bit of play in it. Second thing we're gonna grind down is in between these two little posts here. We got one post there and one post there. There's an oil pan fastener that kind of sticks up. We're gonna grind that hump down right there, just a little bit, and that's it. That's all you got to do in order to get these things installed. All right, just like that, they are in. This is it. Put those all in. Adapter on there. Getting ready to lower it down here in a second. Went ahead and put some washers on there until I weld on a permanent piece behind that plate. But I'm getting ready to tighten this down. I'm going to take out the, made a little piece of wood to space it out while we were mocking this up. So I'm going to take that out here right now and then show you guys in the air how these fit. All right, we're underneath. You can see gaps underneath there. So this is underneath, it's installed. Give you guys a better look at what we're working at here. So made this little adapter right here to kind of get it to fit onto the block real clean, and then get this mount essentially right there finished up. Anyway, fitment's pretty dialed in. Went in the first time and just really happy. You definitely need to notch the bottom cross member subframe in order to kind of get this to fit in. We had to remove the AC, and this doesn't hit right there. It's really close. But the next thing that we got to do is relocate the rack, and then we'll be finished up. And then get the subframe reinforcement kind of welded in and get you guys happy on that. All right, guys, stay tuned.
All right, so now you can see the assembly together. We have this cover, the power plant frame, all assembled. The drive shaft is in. You can see up there. It's a little difficult to see. The drive shaft's in, power plant frame bolts up. This cover here for the drive shaft, protect that, that's all covered up. Everything bolts together. From the engine back, everything's great.